Hello, my friends. Welcome back to the cottage kitchen at the Elliott homestead. As you can tell, it is night outside, but our day is not quite done yet. This is the time of day when we've finished dinner and we've cleaned away the dishes and everyone's sort of settling in for bed. This is the time that I often do my sourdough. But don't worry, if you don't have a sourdough starter, you can still make these delicious overnight bagels. I'm going to be using sourdough for mine, and I'm also going to be using einkorn flour because it's the flour I love to bake with. As a quick reminder, we're going to be running an einkorn baking workshop in just a few weeks. So if you'd like more information on baking your holiday goods with this really wonderful flour, it can be a little tricky when you first get started, but you just need a few tips to get you going. I'm going to put a link to that right below the video so you can join in our einkorn holiday baking workshop. But this video is about overnight bagels. So at lunchtime, I fed my sourdough starter, so it's nice and active. So what I have here is 2 cups of active sourdough starter. If you don't have a sourdough starter, mix 1 cup of water with 1 cup of flour and add a pinch of yeast and leave it out for the afternoon, and the results will be the same. Really wonderful either way. I love sourdough starter. It breaks down your flour, sort of pre-digests it for you, so it makes your baked goods really nutritious and really easy for your body to digest. It's worth the effort. So here we go. This is sort of the routine that takes place in our kitchen. Like I said, people are out of the kitchen at this point. They're not bugging me. It's a great time to put on music, and it's a great time to mix this up. I can mix these up in about 5 minutes. So it's really no effort. It's easier than doing the work in the morning. So here we are, fed sourdough starter, or just using that yeast in equal parts flour and water. And we're going to mix these up in no time. I'm going to be using a digital scale because it makes your baked goods turn out good every time. Cup measurements can be a little trickier, not as precise. So I have a digital scale that I'm going to be using. If you would like the exact recipe for these bagels, make sure you join our free newsletter because that's where I send them out. So you can get a nice printable version of it. So I'm going to start with 350 grams of warm water.
Motivated by their 100-year family history in kitchen supply, Maiden founders Chip and Jake have reshaped the kitchen supply landscape with exceptionally made kitchenware. They partner with the best raw material providers to build superior kitchen products. Maiden's kitchenware is used in multiple Michelin star restaurants around the world and has received over 100,000 5-star reviews. One of those is mine. Use the link below the video to save on your first order. Maiden's stainless collection is premium 5-ply stainless steel material, which is crafted in Italy. The 5 layers allow for superior heat retention, even heating, and ease of heat control. The stainless collection can go from stovetop to oven with ease up to 800 degrees, which is just ridiculous. Here's what I love about the collection. They're so lightweight that it just makes them very manageable to use, clean, and store. I love this entire collection. I know you will too. Use the link below the video to save on your first order with Maiden.
Sourdough or baking your own home goods is one of those things that kind of has to become part of your routine. You have to find ways that make it work in real time, in real life for your family. These overnight bagels are one that we've just worked into our repertoire seamlessly, and we make them all the time. All right, we've added in our water. Now I'm going to add in some maple syrup. You can use what sweetener you'd like. I like maple syrup. Mix that in as well. Now I'm going to be adding in approximately 9 cups of flour, precisely 1,080 grams. This is an all-purpose einkorn flour. There we go. By the way, I'm making a huge batch because I have a lot of children and they love bagels. And so I've got a busy day tomorrow. So these bagels are going to double as breakfast with some hard-boiled eggs and some prosciutto, and also for lunch. Okay. Last ingredient is salt. 4 good teaspoons. So you can see I'm still in one bowl. I mix up my sourdough starter or my yeast leaven, whichever one you're doing. I put it in one bowl, set it aside, and I'm adding this all to that same bowl. So very few dishes were dirtied in the process. This dough is a really stiff dough. When you think about a bagel, it's dense and it's chewy. And the way that you achieve that is by adding a lot of flour and not a lot of water, which means the dough is kind of really tough. So I'm going to get it as close as I can get it to being mixed with my wooden spoon. After that, I'm going to transfer it to this cutting board and mix it a little further. All right, that's about as far as I can take it. But you can see we still have a ways to go. This is a no knead recipe. This is not going to take a lot of your time. The only thing I need to worry about doing is just mixing it so that there's no dry flour pockets left. Lots of different ways that you could do this. I love to use a dough scraper with EINKORN because it can be a bit sticky. And just flip it over itself. Press with your hands. I mean, this recipe, so long as you remember to either activate your sourdough starter or get your yeast leaven going, I mean, this is kind of a foolproof recipe. It's a great one to teach your kids how to make because it's not too complicated, not too fussy. You can see how stiff it is. So just do the work to get it to a homogeneous dough. No wet pockets, no dry pockets. It should all look the same. So I'm not kneading this now to activate any gluten. It's not serving any purpose. I'm just wanting to make sure that I got it all mixed together. If I look at it, I can still see some dry pockets. And so I just want to work it together for a second. It has this perfect kind of tacky texture when it's done. If einkorn flour has been a stressor for you or you haven't quite figured it out, this is a really wonderful recipe to start with. The best part about einkorn flour is that it has a really delicious flavor. So even if it didn't have the added benefit of a weak gluten or high protein or really rich minerals and vitamins, you have the flavor. You've kind of got it all. All right, see how this is nice and smooth now? It's just a little teeny tiny bit tacky. This is perfect. And that was the extent of our work. So in 5 minutes, we've mixed together what we need for breakfast and for lunch tomorrow. So teeny bit of flour in the bottom of my bowl. My dough is going to go back into the same bowl. I'm going to cover it with my super handy little lid there. And that's going to sit out on the counter until I make it out in the morning and have my first cup of coffee, and then it'll be breakfast time. Okay, we're back at it. Good morning. We're still in the dark here, but our dough has been sitting out overnight. I actually got up at 4 in the morning and thought, oh my goodness, I left the dough on the counter. The kitchen is so poorly insulated. It gets so cold this time of year. So I ran upstairs and put the dough in the oven just so it would stay a little bit warmer, a little bit more protected, and it looks perfect. You can see it barely rose at all, which is fine because these are supposed to be dense. So you're not going to get a big rise on this just because of that ratio to flour. So really all that's left to do is shape them and bake them. So this is something that's done the next morning. It's a very stiff dough. Sip of coffee. Any of my words don't make sense, it's because that's my first cup of coffee. Okay, so shaping these comes next. This dough feels just perfect. So typically how I do this is just to divide the dough in half to start, because you really want to not mess with them too much. So the easiest way I've found is to take half of a circle of the dough, and then I'm just going to cut it into strips like this, and then those I'll shape into my bagels. So how big you cut your strips is completely dependent on how big you want them. I tried to do them, good morning, Birdie. I tried to do them like kid-ish size so that they don't grab a huge one and then not finish it. So I will probably do these into about 6 or 7 or 8. I never get them quite right. Obviously, the ones in the middle are going to be thicker, so I do those a little bit thinner. But you can see it's really just cutting them into pieces. Now, see, that's kind of a funky one, isn't it? We'll do 6, and we'll tuck this away into that piece. All right. Perhaps the trickiest part of this whole endeavor is to shape your bagels, because you don't just do it into a long, even strip. We want to get a beautiful circle, and the way that we do that, you can see the dough sort of naturally is bigger in the middle. And so the only thing I do to shape them is to roll my hands on the ends. And look, that's kind of a funky shape. Doesn't look like a bagel at all. But when you stretch it a little bit and fold those two thin ends over itself, you end up with a bagel that's even on all sides. Let's do that again. So I'm going to roll and press on the ends. I've got an ugly side of the dough here. This is just from where the dough is sitting inside of the bowl. I want that to be my bottom. I want this part, the smooth part, to be my top. So then I take my two ugly ends here and I fold them together. Now, if your dough isn't quite sticking, just get it wet a little bit with your fingertips, and those ends will stick together. Oh, also worth noting, if you would like to flavor your bagels at all, something like a cinnamon raisin or my very favorite, which is sun-dried tomato, you would have added that in last night when we mixed up the dough. I keep mine plain just because it gives us the most versatility, and everyone in my family likes their bagel a little bit differently. So there we go. There's half. I'm going to grab a baking tray lined with parchment paper, get my water heated up. It can be best to just put a teeny bit of olive oil down before you put the bagels onto the tray, because they're going to want to stick just ever so slightly. So these actually have to go through 2 stages of cooking now. They're going to be boiled in my beautiful pot, and then they're going to be baked in the oven. So it might sound like a lot of work. I promise you that it's worth it. And once you get the hang of it, it's really not too bad. So I've got my water just so it's ready when I'm ready to boil them. My oven is going to be preheating, and these are just going to hang out on the counter for a few minutes while both of those things warm up and while I finish my coffee. Okay, it's been about 30 minutes. The oven is preheated to 425. My pot of water is ready to boil the bagels. The final step for the water is to add just a pinch of baking soda, and this is going to help give us that beautiful, chewy texture on the outside of our bagel. All right, so I'm gonna have to do this in a few batches, but it goes really quickly. I'm just gonna carefully drop the bagels into the water and they'll float to the top, and then we'll remove them, put them back on the tray, and put them into the oven. So the bagels aren't cooked yet. That's going to take place in the oven. All we've done is boil them, which gives us that chewy exterior on the outside. It's really sticky because we've essentially activated the glue that's in the flour. So if you would like to dip your bagels in some sort of sesame seed or herb seasoning, now would be the time to do that. When they come out of the water, just dunk them down in, and then you'll bake them with that flavoring on top. Like I said, I'm going to keep these plain to keep them as versatile as I can for my family, but just know that's when you would do that in this process. Look at those, how beautiful. And the best part is all this work of making them and shaping them, it was all done on the fringes of the day. Little teeny pockets of time, little teeny bits of effort, and this is the result. I hope you enjoy.